You're tuned in to Beyond the Known. Beneath the relentless sun of the Giza Plateau, a monument rises, not just from the sands of Egypt, but from the bedrock of human mystery, the Great Pyramid. For centuries, it's been seen as Khafre's legacy. But there's a problem. There's no body, no tomb inscriptions, no official blueprint, only impossible engineering and silence. Perfect symmetry, massive stones moved across miles, and a monument aligned to the stars, all built in an age that shouldn't have known how. Some say it was Khafre. Others claim something far older, an ancient lost civilization, or something not of this earth. Could the Great Pyramid be more than a tomb? Could it be a method from a forgotten past, or a power still misunderstood?
Welcome. Today we're looking at one of humanity's most enduring marvels, the Great Pyramid of Giza. It's more than just a huge structure. It feels like this silent, ancient question mark sitting there in the desert.
Absolutely. For thousands of years, its sheer size and incredible precision has sparked all sorts of theories, some quite grounded, others, well, pretty far out there.
So in this episode, we're going on a bit of a journey. We'll start with the story you usually hear, the accepted history. Then we'll look at the puzzles, the engineering anomalies that make people question that story.
And from those anomalies, we'll explore some of the more speculative ideas that have emerged, theories about, forgotten civilizations, maybe even extraterrestrial involvement.
But our main goal here is to cut through the noise, move past the sensational stuff, and see what the actual archaeological and scientific research tells us. It's really a search for understanding, figuring out where solid findings take over from speculation. Let's begin with the account passed down through mainstream archaeology. Who was said to have built the Great Pyramid, and when?
Okay, so the conventional view, the one most Egyptologists work with, attributes the Great Pyramid specifically to Pharaoh Khafre and the nearby Sphinx. That's generally linked to his son, Khafre. This isn't just a guess. It's based on the whole context of the Giza Plateau as a royal burial site.
Right, so the Sphinx isn't just some random statue nearby.
Exactly. It's seen as a core part of Khafre's pyramid complex. Think about its location. It's carved from the bedrock right north of Khafre's causeway, the path leading from his valley temple up toward his pyramid. It really suggests it was all planned together, part of one massive project in the mid-3rd millennium BCE.
That integration sounds key. Is there physical evidence directly linking Khafre to that area, specifically the Sphinx complex?
There is. A really significant find was a life-size statue of Khafre, made of diorite, discovered inside the valley temple. And that temple is directly connected to his pyramid by that causeway, which itself runs right past the Sphinx. The whole layout, pyramid, temples, causeway, Sphinx, it all forms this cohesive unit. It strongly points to a single pharaoh's master plan for his eternal resting place.
Okay, so that puts the construction firmly in Egypt's 4th dynasty, roughly 2500 BCE.
That's the time frame, yes.
Yeah.
Based on archaeological data, king lists, and even some astronomical clues from other Old Kingdom sites, Khufu's reign and the building of his pyramid are generally placed somewhere between 2700 and 2500 BCE.
What about the actual construction time? I remember hearing the historian Herodotus claimed it took about 20 years. That sounds incredibly fast.
It does seem fast, and Herodotus wrote much later, so his figure's debated. But whether it was exactly 20 years or maybe a bit longer, it highlights the sheer intensity required. If you take the estimated 2.3 million blocks, building it in, say, 2 decades means placing a block roughly every 3.5 minutes constantly. It implies an unbelievably efficient system for quarrying, transporting, and lifting.
That rate is just staggering to think about. Now, within this official story, the main purpose was as a tomb for Khufu, right? But people often point out that no mummy or inscriptions naming him were found inside the main chambers.
That's true. No mummy identified as Khufu, and no big royal inscriptions were found in the king's or queen's chamber. But the idea of it being a tomb is still the prevailing view, based on architecture in comparison to other royal tombs. The lack of a body or grave goods isn't actually that unusual for Egyptian tombs. Most were looted in antiquity, sometimes quite soon after burial. The Great Pyramid, for all its defenses, was likely plundered too.
So even without the mummy, what specific features inside the pyramid strongly suggest it was built as a tomb?
Well, you have the sarcophagus, that large granite box in the king's chamber. Its size and placement are typical for a royal burial. Then there's the complex security system. Think about the massive granite portcullis blocks designed to slide down and seal the king's chamber, plus other huge granite plugs intended to block the ascending passage. These aren't features you'd build for just anything. They scream, "Protect the burial." The whole internal layout, with passages leading to these chambers, fits the model of a pharaoh's journey to the afterlife.
It really paints a picture of immense ambition and skill. So, in the context of the Old Kingdom, how significant was the Great Pyramid as an achievement?
Oh, it's widely considered the absolute pinnacle of Old Kingdom engineering. It showcases an incredibly advanced understanding of measurement for its time. They used the royal cubit, a standard unit of about 52.4 centimeters, with amazing consistency. And they had a system called the seeked for measuring slopes, precisely, basically. A rise-over-run method which allowed them to get those perfect angles on the pyramid faces.
So it wasn't just about moving heavy stones.
Not at all. The planning, the administration needed to manage tens of thousands of workers, quarrying stone sometimes hundreds of miles away in Aswan, transporting it via the Nile, and then completing this massive project within the pharaoh's lifetime.
Yeah.
It all points to truly exceptional project management skills. It was a state-level effort, pushing their civilization's capabilities to the absolute limit.
Now that we've outlined the accepted historical narrative, what physical features of the Great Pyramid push the boundaries of what should have been possible in its time? These are the things that really fuel the alternative theories.
Right, this is where things get really intriguing. Let's start with the sheer weight and placement of some stones. Inside the king's chamber, forming the ceiling and the relieving chambers above it, are 43 enormous granite beams. Each one weighs between 45 and 70 tons.
70 tons. And how high up are they?
They're about 30 meters, maybe 130 feet above the base. And granite is incredibly hard stone, much harder than the limestone used for the bulk of the pyramid. So you have to ask, how did they quarry these massive blocks, transport them likely hundreds of miles from Aswan, and then lift them that high and position them so precisely, apparently without things like cranes or even the wheel being widely used? It's a huge engineering question.
Beyond just the weight, there's the precision of the whole structure, isn't there?
Astonishingly so. The base, for instance, it covers over 13 acres, but it's almost perfectly leveled. The corners vary by only about half an inch. And it's aligned incredibly accurately to true north, within just 3/60ths of a degree. That's more accurate than magnetic north, which suggests sophisticated astronomical observation and surveying. Modern engineers using lasers would find that challenging on such a scale.
And this precision extends down to the individual blocks.
Especially the original outer casing stones, many of which are now gone. They were made of smooth, white Tura limestone. Reports from times when more were intact, and the few that remain, show incredibly fine joints between them, sometimes described as so tight you couldn't fit a knife blade between them. These casing stones weighed maybe 650 kilograms each, much less than the core blocks but still substantial. Yet they were maneuvered with such accuracy to create this seamless, polished surface.
Inside the pyramid, you mentioned the lack of soot earlier. Can you expand on that? It seems like a small detail, but significant.
It is curious. Observers have noted that the inner chambers and passages, like the king's chamber, don't show the kind of soot or smoke stains you'd expect if workers used torches for light over potentially decades of construction and funerary rites. This absence has led some to speculate, well, did they have some form of clean illumination we don't know about? Maybe reflective copper mirrors directing sunlight or something more exotic? It's an observation that fuels speculation.
And then there are the air shafts, or perhaps star shafts. What's the thinking there?
These 4 narrow shafts, 2 originating from the king's chamber and 2 from the queen's chamber, angle upwards through the pyramid's mass. While initially thought to be for ventilation, research, particularly by people like Robert Bauval and Adrian Gilbert, suggests they have precise astronomical alignments. For example, around 2500 BCE, the southern shaft of the king's chamber pointed towards Orion's belt, and the northern shaft towards Thuban, which was the pole star at that time.
And the queen's chamber shafts?
The southern shaft from the queen's chamber pointed towards Sirius, a very important star linked to the goddess Isis and the Nile's inundation. The northern one pointed towards the Little Dipper. Proponents argue these alignments are too precise and culturally significant to be accidental or merely for air. They see it as evidence the pyramid was designed with a cosmic purpose, perhaps related to the pharaoh's soul ascending to the stars.
So it fits into this bigger picture of a potential cosmic design intent.
That's the argument. Some researchers delve into the pyramid's geometry and dimensions, claiming they encode mathematical constants like pi and phi, the golden ratio, with remarkable accuracy. For example, the ratio of the perimeter of the base to the height is very close to 2. Others suggest the dimensions relate to the size of the Earth, its orbital speed, even complex astronomical concepts like Lagrange points. The sheer number of these apparent correlations leads some to argue it implies a level of scientific knowledge far beyond what we attribute to the Old Kingdom Egyptians. Ancient texts mentioning iron from the sky or linking the afterlife to stars are sometimes woven into this interpretation, suggesting a deep, symbolic cosmic connection.
These anomalies challenge the accepted timeline and origin. Could the Great Pyramid be the work not of the Old Kingdom, but of a far older and perhaps unknown source? This opens the door to some really fascinating, though highly debated, ideas.
Yes, this is where we get into the territory of, well, alternative history or pseudo-archaeology. The core idea often starts with the premise that the known ancient Egyptians simply couldn't have built something this sophisticated. Therefore, the argument goes, someone else must have. This leads to theories about lost civilizations like Atlantis or some other advanced culture that predates recorded history.
One very well-known theory linking the pyramids to an earlier time is the Orion correlation theory. What's the basic idea there?
Proposed by Robert Bauval, it suggests the layout of the three main Giza pyramids mimics the three stars in Orion's belt. Crucially, he argues the alignment, particularly the slight offset of the third smaller pyramid, Menkaur's, perfectly matches how those stars looked in the sky around 10,500 BCE, not 2,500 BCE. This much earlier date, obviously, radically contradicts the standard timeline.
And other researchers, like Graham Hancock and Robert Schoch, have also argued for a similar, much older date, right? Especially concerning the Sphinx.
Correct. Hancock connects this 10,500 BCE date to the age of Leo, arguing the Sphinx's lion body is a marker for that era. Robert Schoch, a geologist, focused on what he interprets as water erosion patterns on the body of the Sphinx and the walls of its enclosure. He argues these patterns suggest prolonged exposure to heavy rainfall, something Egypt hasn't experienced for millennia, pointing back to a wetter period around the end of the last ice age, again aligning with that 10,500 BCE timeframe.
So the claim is that Khafre didn't build the Sphinx, he just sort of found it, maybe put his face on it.
Essentially, yes. Or that he inherited these much older structures and integrated them into his own complex. This hypothesis often includes the idea that Egyptian civilization, particularly pyramid building, actually declined after Giza, suggesting the Egyptians were trying to copy a lost, superior technology they didn't fully understand.
This lost civilization narrative often involves a cataclysm wiping them out, leaving only traces like the pyramids.
That's a common thread. The idea is that a major global event, perhaps rapid sea level rise from melting glaciers around 12,000 years ago, destroyed this advanced prehistoric civilization, fitting with flood myths found worldwide. The pyramids, in this view, are durable survivors. And within this framework, the pyramid is often reinterpreted not just as a tomb, but as a piece of technology.
Technology? In what way? Energy generation.
That's one popular fringe theory. Some propose the Great Pyramid functioned as a kind of power plant, perhaps using underground water sources, conductive shafts, and its original limestone casing as an insulator, maybe even topped with a gold capstone acting like a giant capacitor or Tesla coil component. They sometimes point to debated evidence like alleged machine marks on granite as proof of advanced tools. However, scientific analysis looking at things like natural radioactive decay, potassium-40 within the granite, and basic physics principles hasn't validated these energy generation theories.
What about acoustics? I've heard theories about sound being used.
Yes, another line of speculation involves acoustic resonance. The idea is that the chambers, particularly the king's chamber with its granite construction, were designed to resonate at specific low frequencies, possibly harnessing Earth's natural vibrations or even, more speculatively, enabling acoustic levitation of stones. Proponents might cite unusual acoustic properties measured in the chambers or point to large stone basins found elsewhere as potential transducers.
And besides energy or acoustics, maybe data storage.
That's another angle. The pyramid as a repository of knowledge, a sort of time capsule containing the wisdom, mathematics, and astronomical data of this lost civilization, preserved in its very geometry and alignment, intended to survive the cataclysm and maybe be decoded later. And often tied into these lost civilization theories are accusations that mainstream archaeology is deliberately hiding or suppressing this true history.
It's a compelling narrative, the idea of a lost golden age, but it does seem to require setting aside a lot of the established archaeological context.
It does. These theories often highlight anomalies while downplaying the vast amount of evidence supporting the conventional timeline and the clear developmental sequence of Egyptian architecture. The idea that ancient people were incapable often underestimates their documented ingenuity and organizational skills.
When theories of lost civilizations fall short, could the answer lie beyond our world among visitors from the stars? This takes us into even more speculative territory.
This is the ancient astronaut hypothesis, most famously popularized by Erich von Däniken in his book Chariots of the Gods back in the late 60s. The basic idea is that structures like the Great Pyramid were just too advanced for ancient humans alone, so they must have had help, direct intervention, or at least guidance from extraterrestrial beings who visited Earth in antiquity.
So the encoded knowledge, the precision, the scale in this view, it's not human genius, it's alien technology or instruction.
That's the core claim. Proponents argue that the sophisticated astronomy, mathematics, and engineering seemingly embedded in the pyramid point to an off-world source. Perhaps the alignments were navigational aids for spacecraft, or the mathematical constants were universal principles shared by advanced civilizations. The pyramids become evidence of extraterrestrial contact.
And how do proponents interpret Egyptian culture itself through this lens, the art and myths?
They often reinterpret specific hieroglyphs or artworks. For instance, some claim certain depictions resemble modern technology, like light bulbs or flying craft. The famous Dendera light bulbs are a common example, though Egyptologists interpret them as mythological scenes involving a lotus flower and a serpent. Gods with unusual appearances or extraordinary powers are seen not as symbolic figures, but as literal depictions of aliens. Myths, like stories of gods teaching humans skills or ascending to the heavens, are taken as accounts of alien interaction and departure.
So Osiris being reborn isn't just myth, it's alien medical tech.
That's the kind of reinterpretation you might see. Isis's magic becomes advanced science. Thoth's wisdom becomes alien knowledge transfer. The ancient Egyptians, in this view, perceived these powerful visitors as gods because they couldn't grasp their true nature or technology.
And the pyramid as power plant idea gets adapted here, too.
Yes, it often resurfaces, but framed as technology built for or gifted by aliens. Maybe the pyramid was an energy source for their ships, a communications beacon, or part of some planetary grid they established. Some theories get incredibly specific and, frankly, fantastical, suggesting things like hidden alien spacecraft inside or the pyramid being a dimensional portal. These ideas are fueled more by imagination than by testable evidence.
And it's impossible to ignore how much popular culture has run with these ideas.
Absolutely. TV shows, movies, books, the ancient astronaut concept is incredibly popular. It taps into our fascination with space, the mysteries of the past, and the possibility of not being alone. It makes for great entertainment, but it often presents speculation as fact and can overshadow the actual, often equally fascinating archaeological findings.
We followed the stories of sky beings and long-lost advanced civilizations. But if we examine the Great Pyramid through the lens of science and archaeology, what does the evidence actually tell us? This feels like the moment where we ground ourselves back in the tangible research.
Right. Let's pivot to what archaeology and related sciences have uncovered. And one of the most compelling pieces of evidence directly linking the pyramid to Khufu came about somewhat accidentally in 1837. An explorer named Howard Vyse used gunpowder, controversially, to blast his way into sealed chambers above the king's chamber. These are now called the relieving chambers.
Relieving chambers, what was their purpose?
They were designed to distribute the immense weight of the masonry above the king's chamber's flat ceiling, preventing it from collapsing. But the crucial thing Vyse found inside these completely sealed spaces were hieroglyphs painted in red ochre. Not formal inscriptions, but rough markings.
Markings, like...
Yeah, they were quarry marks and work gang names. Essentially, graffiti left by the crews who built the pyramid. And significantly, the name of Pharaoh Khufu appeared repeatedly over a dozen times, often as part of gang names like the Gang, the White Crown of Chum Khufu is powerful.
And why is this considered such strong evidence? Could they be fakes?
That's extremely unlikely. Firstly, these chambers were sealed tight since the pyramid's construction. No one could have added the graffiti later until Vyse blasted in. Secondly, the markings match similar workers' graffiti found at other sites confirmed to belong to Khufu's reign. Thirdly, the script used was hieratic, a cursive form, and Vyse himself lacked the knowledge to fake such complex and authentic-looking inscriptions. It's widely considered slam-dunk evidence by Egyptologists, directly naming the pharaoh during construction.
Okay, so direct textual evidence from sealed contexts. What about dating the structure itself using scientific methods?
That's another crucial line of evidence. Radiocarbon dating. Researchers have carefully collected small samples of organic material, bits of wood, reed, charcoal from fires found embedded within the original mortar used between the pyramid's core blocks. This ensures the material dates to the construction itself.
And what dates did they get?
Multiple studies, notably in 1984 and 1995, analyzed dozens of these samples. The results consistently produce dates clustering around 289971 to 2604 BCE. When refined, focusing on the short-lived materials less likely to be old when used, the time frame narrows to about 2620-2484 BCE. This fits perfectly with the historically derived timeline for Khufu's reign in the 4th dynasty.
Is there any issue with the old wood problem here? The idea they might have used ancient wood for fuel, skewing the dates earlier?
That's always a consideration with radiocarbon dating, yes. If they burned wood that was already centuries old, the date would seem older than the construction. However, the consistency across many samples from different parts of the pyramid makes this less likely to be the sole explanation. If it were just random old wood, you'd expect a much wider, more chaotic scatter of dates. The tight clustering strongly suggests the material was largely contemporary with the building period.
So we have the name and the dates aligning. What about the people? Where did the thousands of workers needed for this massive project live and work?
Archaeology has uncovered extensive evidence for that, too. Just south of the Giza Plateau, excavations revealed a huge settlement, often called Hayt el Ghurab, or the Lost City of the Pyramid Builders. It includes barrack-style galleries that could house thousands, bakeries capable of producing bread on an industrial scale, administrative buildings, and even facilities for processing fish and meat. We find pottery, tools, and importantly, clay ceilings stamped with the names of Khafre and even Khufu, dating the site squarely to the Pyramid Age.
So not just temporary camps, but a whole organized town.
Exactly. A well-planned logistical hub. There's evidence of streets, specialized workshops, and different zones within the settlement. We also see evidence of a highly structured workforce divided into crews and gangs, likely working in rotation. This paints a picture of a massive state-organized project, not some chaotic, haphazard effort.
And what about the workers themselves? The old story is always slaves being forced to build the pyramids. What does the evidence say about their lives?
The evidence strongly refutes the slave narrative. Analysis of animal bones found in huge quantities at the worker settlement shows they ate a lot of meat, beef, mutton, goat. This was a high-protein diet, likely better than the average Egyptian peasants, suggesting they were valued laborers.
And their burials.
We've also found cemeteries specifically for these workers located near the pyramids. Finding worker tombs close to the royal monuments itself implies a degree of respect. The skeletons found within often show signs of hard labor-healed fractures, arthritis, but also evidence of sophisticated medical care, like set bones and even amputations that had healed, meaning the person lived long after the injury. They received proper burials. This all points towards a skilled, compensated, and cared-for national workforce, not slaves worked to death.
That paints a very different picture. So how did they manage the engineering feats, like moving those massive stones? Has experimental archaeology shed light on that?
It certainly has. Various experiments have tested ancient techniques. For instance, a well-known project built a small pyramid using only tools and methods believed available in the Old Kingdom. They found that copper tools, when used with abrasive sand, could cut limestone effectively, albeit slowly. More importantly, they demonstrated that moving multi-ton blocks on wooden sledges over wet sand dramatically reduces friction, making it feasible for teams of men to haul them without wheels or draft animals.
What about lifting the blocks, especially those huge granite beams?
Ramps are the most widely accepted explanation, though the exact configuration is debated. Some favor long, straight external ramps. Others, like Jean-Pierre Houdin, propose a system combining an initial external ramp with a spiraling internal ramp within the pyramid structure. Houdin's internal ramp theory has gained some traction, partly supported by microgravity surveys that seem to detect density variations consistent with such a hidden structure. Other plausible techniques involve levers, rockers, and possibly counterweights.
And you mentioned an iron plate found inside. That seems significant.
Yes, an iron plate was discovered lodged within the masonry back in Weiss's time. Its dating confirmed it was contemporary with the pyramid's construction. While iron wasn't widely used for tools then, copper and bronze were standard, its presence suggests the Egyptians weren't entirely unfamiliar with it and perhaps used it for very specific, limited purposes. It just adds another layer to their known technological capabilities.
So putting it all together, the Great Pyramid, while extraordinary, fits within a known progression of Egyptian building techniques.
That's the consensus among Egyptologists. You can trace a clear evolution from early rectangular mastaba tombs to Djoser's step pyramid, then Pharaoh Khafre's experiments, the collapsed pyramid at Meidum, the bent pyramid at Dashur, and finally the red pyramid, the first successful true smooth-sided pyramid. Khufu's Great Pyramid is the next logical, albeit massively ambitious, step in that sequence. It represents the peak of that developmental curve, achieved through immense organization and refinement of existing techniques, not an inexplicable anomaly dropped from the sky or resurrected from a lost age.
So the overwhelming weight of evidence points to Khufu and the 4th dynasty Egyptians. But does that fully explain everything? Does it diminish the wonder?
Not at all. Even knowing who built it and roughly when, the sheer scale, the incredible precision, the logistical mastery involved, it remains awe-inspiring. How exactly they achieved that level of accuracy with their tools, how they maintained motivation and organization over decades, these aspects still hold mysteries and command immense respect. Acknowledging the Egyptians as the builders doesn't lessen the wonder. In many ways, it enhances it, highlighting the incredible potential of human ingenuity and determination. The mystery shifts from who to the finer details of how, and that's still a fascinating puzzle.
So we've traveled quite a path today from the standard history through perplexing anomalies into the realms of lost worlds and alien architects, and finally landing back on the bedrock of archaeological evidence. The Great Pyramid certainly compels us to question, to explore, and ultimately to appreciate human achievement.
It truly does. It stands as this powerful symbol of what a focused society, driven by belief and incredible organization, could accomplish thousands of years ago. While fringe theories offer intriguing narratives, the pyramid remains, most fundamentally, a testament to the ancient Egyptians themselves, their skills, their knowledge, and their sheer willpower. The ongoing research continues to reveal more about them, even as the monument retains its aura of profound mystery.
As you consider the vastness of human history, what other ancient marvels, perhaps shrouded in their own enduring mysteries, might reveal even deeper truths through the lens of persistent inquiry and new research? That's it for this journey beyond the known. If the unknown calls to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow. And if you want to dig even deeper, become a member of Vault Access or Secret Passage, where early access to episodes, audiobook underground, and curated wonders await.